You just press what that is, so it's recording.
Camille, it all sounds good now.
Hi.
Thank you.
I'm in class, but I just wanted to say hi.
Camille, it all sounds good now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Say someone was interested.
Okay, I'm like good with the technology. Can you guys hear me okay? Yes, okay, thank you. Thank you for your patience, Charlie. All right.
Oh, it's cool.
Oh, good. Yep, now we can hear you nice and clear. Yay.
Oh, good. Everybody can.
Good, 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 good. Okay, we're all set up. So we are going to have Sam introduce you, sir.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you might want to move.
You could always pull your chair over here for me, sir. That's no good to
Over the past decade, Charlesse has established herself as one of the most talented in the business. She has a unique talent of creating characters that are imaginative yet grounded in reality. With Charlesse's personal fashion influences, ranging from 1969 to Afrofuturism of the 70s, Gianni Versace's 90s, as well as her passion for travel and exploring the world, Charlesse creates groundbreaking, vibrant periods and contemporary costumes. Charlesse has costume designed 10 remarkable feature films over the last 10 years, starting with Newlyweds, which went on to win an Independent Spirit Award and premiered as a part of the 2013 Sundance Next. She then went on to design George Tillman's Inevitable Defeat of Mr. and Pete, which also premiered at Sundance in 2013. Charlesse has had several films premiere at Tribeca Film Fest, including Vincent and Rocky, Little Boxes, and Spike Lee produced See You Yesterday. Her stunning work has also been seen on TV shows, including Macro Netflix original Raising Dion, which was #1 internationally, as well as Kenya Barris' Netflix original sketch comedy show, Astronomy Club. Charlesse's forthcoming work includes the highly anticipated Judas and the Black Messiah. Charlesse has also worked on projects with Warner Brothers, Columbia Pictures, NBC, ABC, Fox, Showtime, Sony, Hulu, and Netflix. Is launching Black Designer Database, created in 2019, and relaunching her lifestyle brand, Art and Goals. She is a thoughtful, imaginative, and resilient creative who is compelled to be transparent about her journey while consistently offering her resources to fellow aspiring costume designers. Charlesse is read by Endeavor and an active member of the Costume Designers Guild.
Awesome, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. It's really cool to be able to speak at my alma mater and just talk about my career and also just the use of the time that I had at, it was Philadelphia University. I have to remind myself it's now Jefferson. So, at the time I was at Philly U, and, the process that I'm going to talk about today when it comes to research and storytelling and development, very, very, very much, it very, very, very much takes from my time as an undergrad at Philly U, where a lot of what I did was research and development. So, storytelling was a newer thing for me, but it was a tool that I was familiar with through my love of films and stories. And, as a writer, as a child, I thought I wanted to be a writer. So storytelling has always been a part of my journey. But research is something that I learned, and I learned it at Philly U, which is now Jefferson. So, I just wanted to go through a little bit of my research process and development process in designing costumes for Judas and the Black Messiah, and just also talk about the differences between costume design and styling briefly. I won't go, too heavy into it, but I just like to start out with that. So I'm gonna start a presentation right now. Let me share my screen. Okay, so we're here to talk about costume designing, Judas and the Black Messiah, storytelling, and research development. So first I wanted to start out again, like I said, with some differences between costume design and styling. And you guys can totally ask me questions about anything I go over in this presentation. I also don't mind questions while we're going, if that's okay with you guys. I don't mind that either. I would like this to be like really informal. So yeah, so if anybody wants to stop me and ask me more about something that I'm sharing, I'm totally open to that. So, we'll just make this a really fun conversation. Okay. So the difference between costume design and styling. So costume designers tell stories through clothing on film, television, or the stage. Stylists provide media solutions, aka marketing of a person and or product. So some differences would be, as a costume designer, you would design a Broadway play. As a stylist, you would style an actor for the red carpet premiere of said play, right? So you're not, as a stylist, you're not dressing the person in the actual play, but you're styling them for the red carpet to promote the play. If that makes sense to everybody. So that would be like a key way of distinguishing between what a costume designer and a stylist does. Now, some stylists, especially stylists who work in, fashion editorials or editors, they do tell stories, but the reason why they're telling the stories through the editorials is to sell the clothing. So you're still marketing a product, trying to sell a product, trying to sell a person as a stylist. Costume designers are artists telling stories. So I wanted to share, I hope you can see this. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Because on my screen, I'm kind of blocking one side of the images. So let me know if you can see the full board. So this is a board. I want you guys to see Lakeith, who plays ONeal in Judas and the Black Messiah, his journey through clothing and us telling a story through clothing. So, when we first see him, he's doing his con, right? So he's dressed up for his con. And then the next time we see him, he's himself. He's a young street kid in the 60s, dirty, ratty sneakers. He doesn't have a lot of money. As we progress through the story, and he starts to become, one, a paid informant, and two, he takes on this identity of a Panther. You start to see his clothing change. His clothing gets nicer. He's wearing, the camo jackets that the Panthers are wearing. He starts to wear a beret. He starts to wear more black, when he's dressed up as a Panther. So it distinguishes between his street clothes and him as a Panther, because his Panther identity isn't him. It's a costume he's putting on. When you see him in street clothes, as he starts to get paid as an informant, he looks more like a hustler, right? So his look is more of a hustler. He's got more money. He's wearing spread collars. He's wearing leather jackets. He's wearing cool boots, and then you start to see some of those hustler elements come into his Panther costume, because he can't really separate the two, right? He's very confused about who he is. So I just wanted to just show you guys all his costumes together. This is from the first frame of the movie to the last time we see him. This is every scene that he's in, and just how I told a story through his costumes and his character's journey. So just wanted to point that out.
Great. That was great. Oh my God. I remember parts of the movie.
Yeah. And yeah, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to jump in. Sorry, my cat is here and he's loud. So if you hear rustling, that's my cat. So this is some research. I wanted to show you guys like specific documentaries and books and things that I actually read and pulled images from and scanned images from. So this first image is the research library, costume library in LA at Western Costumes. So we have this amazing resource as costume designers, which is this library. And we have amazing librarians, and you can come in there and you can tell them you're researching anything, and they will pull, you know, files for you. They will pull books for you because they know this library really, really well. So, you know, my number one go-to is libraries like the costume library. And if I'm not in LA, you know, using the costume library in New York is another great resource for costume design because they'll have everything. And they also have helpful librarians. Like I've been emailing with one about the 70s, and she sent me some amazing titles and, you know, books, magazines, etc. They also at this library had catalogs bound from, I believe, the 50s until catalogs went out of business, which was probably like the 90s, if I'm not mistaken. Y'all would probably know better than me, professors. So they had them bound by, you know, decade, you know, Sears, JCPenney. So all of that was there. And I also relied heavily on that, particularly when costuming like our background, knowing what shoes are the period correct shoes, you know, was a hoodie even invented and being worn then? Like, you know, questions like that. Crew neck sweatshirts, like raglan sleeves, like we're finding all these things in catalogs and realizing there were even sometimes contemporary pieces we could use because they were relatively unchanged from that time period, right? So we relied heavily on the images from catalogs for that kind of research. This book, Power to the People, The World of Black Panthers, is one book that I scanned a lot of images from and used for my research and making boards. The Assassination of Fred Hampton was another book that I read and scanned images from, particularly about Fred Hampton and Chicago Panthers. And if you guys want to dive more into the world that the film touched on, these are great books, and which is why I wanted to throw these in here. If you're interested in learning more, these are great books to dive into. There's a documentary called The Murder of Fred Hampton, and you can access this on Amazon. It's relatively affordable. I can't say it's more than $10 to buy it or rent it. So that documentary had some great footage of, you know, Chairman Fred having meetings with the Panthers, the meetings with the Rainbow Coalition, meetings with the Young Patriots, like things that I also relied heavily on when costuming these various gangs in the movie. And then Black Panthers Vanguard of Revolution, that documentary, I believe a lot of people are familiar with. It's probably one of the foremost documentaries about the Panthers. It came out a couple years ago. And the thing about this documentary is it focuses on the Bay Area chapter mostly. It touches on Chicago and Fred a little bit towards, I would say, like the middle of the film. So I was able to get some good screenshots, you know, from that. But there's a huge difference between the Bay Area Panthers and their look and then the Chicago Panthers, also Philly Panthers. Like they all had, you know, different vibes. New York Panthers, they all kind of had a different look, and it was very subtle. So, you know, when it came to actually dressing our Panthers, we didn't rely super heavy on the imagery of the Bay Area Panthers, but you know, it was just a good documentary just to have an overall, just like an overall gist of who the Panthers were, what they were doing during the time, how they were dressing, and then also just the ideology, because it was very important to get into the ideology when dressing our Panthers. Also vintage magazines, like this is a specific Life magazine that we look to when dressing our Chicago police, and it's this issue, and luckily I found a screen grab. And also Ebony magazines from that time, looked at a lot of Ebony magazines. There was a specific issue of GQ that was about Chicago men's fashion. It was called The Chicago Look. Also relied heavily on that for some of ONeal's inspiration for his like hustler looks and more suited looks. So look at that. So after I watched all these documentaries, read all these magazines, scanned all these images, screenshotted these documentaries, I started building boards. And I wanted to show you guys like a side by side of the mood boards and stills from the film, so you can kind of see the through line of research and then the costumes. So this was Fred Hampton's board. A lot of this imagery was, either scanned from books or, the internet is a wonderful place now, the Getty Images had a lot of imagery of him, which is great. And then I just wanted to show a side by side of, some stills of him in the film. So as you see, he has on crew neck sweatshirts a lot, sweaters, the camo hat, corduroy jacket, just like really stuck to his overall, vibe, and broke down his wardrobe to a few key pieces based on the imagery that we had of him, and then designed the costumes to reflect that. So that's Fred. This is ONeal. So ONeal, we didn't have a ton of imagery for. I mean, there is an image, if you look in the middle, that is him, as a kid, his mugshot. And it's also an image of him standing in front of Chairman Fred, if you can also see in the middle. And there's another image of him standing next to Chairman Fred towards the top in the middle. And that's where we got the idea of the camo jacket, putting him in the camo jacket a lot. The other imagery is just mood imagery for his aspirational self, him, once he starts getting money, things like that. Towards the bottom, you'll see this is an actual screenshot of ONeal before he passed, or committed suicide rather, in the Eyes on the Prize documentary. And we ended up recreating that to intercut into the film as well. So I'll get into that as well later, because we recreated the suit, and I just want to show you some stuff from that. This was my board for the Panthers. So there's Bob Lee, Bobby Rush, Doc Satchel, Judy, and ONeal. So again, you can see like a through line, like Bobby Rush in the glasses. Bobby Rush is a little bit more mod, so we dressed him a little bit more mod, and he is to Fred's right. He's to Fred's right. Bob Lee was part Native American, so we dressed him, and he was also from the South. He was from Texas, so that was his inspiration when dressing him and making him a unique character, was pulling in that cultural references into his clothing. So he's wearing cowboy boots, he's wearing the Native American beads, and you can't really see it, but there are documentaries of him wearing the beads over his sweater. You can kind of see it a little bit in that image on the left where it has the French caption. I can't read French. So, he has the beads on in these stills, but you can't really see them because of the way it's angled. And then, just like put some group shots of Panthers in, from the films, just to kind of reflect back to some of our group shots here on the boards. And pins. I'm gonna get into pins too, because we ended up reproducing the pins as well. And you can see a few pins on like Bobby Rush's sweater, on Cha-Cha Jimenez's hat. So we'll get into that a little bit more later. Young Lords. So these are boards for the Young Lords party, and just wanted to again just draw a through line between the boards and some stills from the film. Unfortunately, a lot of their scenes kind of got like cut out, so you can't really see. You can kind of see it, but like the cardigans that they're wearing, the guy behind Cha-Cha in this first still on top, he has on one of the cardigans, and we actually like recreated the cardigans to be purple and gold, which were their colors. And if you rewatch the movie, you might catch a frame of them in these purple and gold cardigans when they come up to the funeral. So that's what we based our research off of. And the cardigans in Chicago were worn by street gangs, and they wore different color cardigans, and they had chain stitch embroidery and insignias and things and colors to differentiate themselves from each other. And the cool thing about the Young Lords was they were a street gang. And then when Cha-Cha Jimenez went to prison and came out, he switched them up to be more of a social political organization, because after he went to jail, he realized like this just wasn't the way, and the way to improve things in his community was through like political action. And he actually came to set. It was really cool. I got to meet him. He came to set. He's still alive. he gave me like the actual pins because up until that point we had been reproducing everything because we couldn't get clearance, and he like handed me the actual Young Lords pins, and that was just really a really beautiful moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really cool. So yeah, this is the Young Lords and Chacha Jimenez. Young Patriots. So this one was challenging for me as a Black person to have to put Confederate flags on people. I'm not gonna lie. And then it was also, sorry.
No, I was just saying, I can only imagine. I'm sorry, I'm like talking.
Yeah. No, it's all good. And then it was also amazing to realize in Cleveland, basically the the Cleveland's like police supply stores sold Confederate flags if you knew how to ask them for them. Like they didn't have them on display, but if you knew how to ask them for them, you could get Confederate flags. And I sent one of the white people in my department just straight up to go do that. And we bought Confederate flag patches from the police stores in Cleveland.
This is now, like
Yeah,
recently?
this was 2019. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Because I thought we were going to have to recreate it. And I thought, and, you know, depending on where you get things made, some places wouldn't do it. You know, like there's like if some of our vendors probably wouldn't make flags. So, you know, I ended up talking to some locals in Cleveland where we were shooting. And I was informed that if you ask them the right way at the Cleveland police supply stores, they will give you Confederate flags. So, yes. And I think the rest we like ordered online because we were like, there's no way someone's gonna make this for us. And so the Patriots, they wore these coyote brown berets, and you can see on Preacher Man, he has like a Confederate flag, he has a fist, you know, and we didn't do a big prominent flag, we did like little pins, and we did Panthers and fists. It was very interesting learning about this group because they were very much like about their Southern heritage, but they recognized that, you know, the Black people in Chicago, in the South Side of Chicago, and the white people in the South Side of Chicago were having the same working class issues. They weren't able to properly feed and educate their children. They were having issues with, you know, wages and things like that. And it wasn't like an easy place to come to, from what I was told, because of some of the racial differences, but they were able to get there eventually. So again, with these guys, really stuck to the source imagery, a lot of denim, very Americana, you know, like a lot of denim plaids, you know, Western themes again here. They're, you know, coming from Appalachia. And we got lucky because Getty Images had some great imagery, and we got some imagery in color of Preacher Man and some of the guys in his organization. And that's like at the bottom left. And so, you know, just really relied heavily on that research and did that, and just wanted to show like the contrast between each organization. And each organization had their own color palette as well. So the Young Lords had like, you know, earth tones and then the purples and golds. And they were the only people that wore purples and golds. And the Young Patriots, you know, primarily wore earth tones, but then pops of red, white, and blue, you know, and plaids. And they were the only people that really wore plaids, right? The Panthers were earth tones as well, and lots of like black leather and the green camo jackets. And they were only org in the movie that wore green and wore that particular color green. So when you rewatch it, you'll see those distinctions, and just really wanted to separate everybody by color in that way. Here's some process photos. So we rebuilt the jacket that ONeal wears in the Eyes on the Prize interview. And this is just some process photos. There's a swatch. There is the suit jacket in progress. And sadly, you only see this much on camera. But, you know, just wanted to show you guys like how much, you know, time and effort goes into, you know, building things. And I know everybody's familiar with this, you know, working as design students, it's the same process. You know, you do your research, you do your fabric swatching, you sketch your designs, you start to build it, you make patterns. In my case, I'm lucky I have tailors, so I don't have to make patterns and build things because I'm managing so many things as a costume designer. But it's the same process. Design is design, clothing design is clothing design. So again, it's another process, another swatch. This is an amazing 12 we found. So because we were in Cleveland, all the fabric swatching was happening in LA and like being overnighted to us. I'm in Boston right now shooting a movie, and it's the same process. When you're on location, a lot of times you don't have the resources you would have in New York or LA. So what we end up doing is having someone locally swatching and, sending us the swatches, overnighting them, telling them exactly what is needed for a particular garment, and making the garment, in-house. So this trench coat was made in-house. This was the sketch for it. And this was the opening scene of the movie. And the thing about this trench coat is it's like the only thing in the movie that's not period correct. And the reason was it was for, direction in camera, like the coat needed to be long to move the way the director wanted it to move. The color of the coat needed to be this gray because we were shooting it at night, and a tan would have been a little bit too light. But, there weren't that many gray trench coats, during the late 60s. And also the trench coats were hip length. They weren't knee length. So, this is like a piece that wasn't quote unquote period correct, but the shape of the sleeve was, the shape of the body was, it was just the length and the color were, a little bit more of a creative choice. We also recreated Deborah's robe from the night of the rave and sourced designed the fabric. So anybody who's in textile design, all that applies here as well. Worked with our in-house graphic designer who happened to have a background in textile design. So we didn't have to hire a separate textile designer. And every movie and TV show has an in-house graphic designer that you work with, because we have to redesign things. We can't sometimes use existing logos or artwork. We have to change it like 30%, stuff like that. So we used an in-house graphic designer. And this first swatch is from an actual vintage robe that I found while sourcing garments. And we use that as an inspiration to kind of build off of, and then also use images of Deborah and Akua and Jerry. But it was really hard to see it, and it's kind of grainy. So we kind of just like came up with, our own idea of how we think it should be laid out and done. So that is the process for the robe. And it was really fun, having, again, we were going back and forth with New York, sending them artwork. They were overnighting us swatches. I actually had them redesign the fabric again because it wasn't right. So we paid for like two big bolts of fabric because, that's what happens in the process. If you're not happy with it and you have time to go back to the drawing board, you go back to the drawing board. So that was the robe and its process. So this is all the pins that we reproduced. These are all based on actual pins that we found in our research. And I included one photo of a kid eating breakfast at the breakfast program. So yeah, we recreated all these pins and had them made. And if you look at documentaries, if you look at imagery of the Panthers, imagery of the Young Lords, and imagery of the Young Patriots, you'll see these various pins. Like they were really wearing the Honkies for Huey pins, the Young Patriots were. Free Fred Hampton, the way it's designed is very much how the actual pins looked. So that was really fun to really like nerd out and get into that research. Also, you'll see the Oakland Panthers, if you can find color images or watch the documentary, the Vanguard documentary, their pins were like this baby blue and pink. So you'll see that as well. So that was that. And that is my talk about research and design and process. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I'm really happy to be here. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. That was so. That was.
So you see some similarities, I'm sure, between what you're doing and the process that you shared, right? So ask away. Yes, no. Don't forget to introduce yourself.
Sarah.
Hi.
Fashion merchandising major. And first of all, first question, you got to meet Lakeith Stanfield. I love him. He's so cute. Anyways. So what is, like, it sounds like so much fun, and when you tell people you're a costume designer, I feel like they're probably like, oh, that's a great job. But what is like one of the drawbacks or one of your least favorite parts about it?
Interesting.
I would say the hours I have to work and the lack of time to prepare for things.
Gotcha.
Those are the two biggest things. Like, you really have to know your stuff and think really fast. And, like, it's funny. I had this conversation with friends the other day, and was like, creatives aren't robots, but I feel like I get treated like that, as a creative in this business, where it's just this expectation of like, I'm just going to come up with this thing overnight. And I do, right? And so because we do, like, they just have this expectation of us and don't always give us the proper prep time and lead time to do things. A lot of times now, casting is really last minute. Like, I'm doing this movie right now, and they're like having people come in the day before they work, and I haven't had a fitting with them, haven't seen them at all, and it's a period piece, and that's been happening more and more. So though, I would definitely say those are the drawbacks, and due to those drawbacks, I ended up having to work more hours. And so, like, the live-work balance is very, very hard. And I don't know if you guys have heard about the strike happening or potential strike happening. This is why, it's because of work-life balance issues, and also just the way that productions are working their crews, not giving us time to prepare, and just the stress levels is very complex. And if you want to read about it, I can post a link in the chat about the strike if you guys want to understand more.
Yes, please do that for us, Charlie.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're welcome.
That was awesome. Thank you for that question.
It was a good question.
Mhm.
Hello. My name is Susie. It's nice to virtually meet you, and thank you for coming. I'm in the fashion merchandising and management program, and when you are creating your costume designs, do you recreate every look? Do you also use vintage pieces? And when you recreate the looks, are you using like vintage textiles at all, or what's the process?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that question too, because I was trying to find some good images of the sourcing process, because the sourcing process is definitely a huge part of the job as well. I do some sourcing, but then I also have people that work with me that specifically are there to source items. So for Judas and the Black Messiah, because I started in LA, there's a lot of resources for renting period clothing. We have lots of costume houses there. So we spend a lot of the first couple of days in the costume houses seeing what's there, putting racks together, renting clothing, compiling all this clothing to send to Cleveland, because we knew the amount of clothing that we needed, especially like, again, with all these last minute fittings, you just need a bunch of turtlenecks and a bunch of sizes, a bunch of mock necks and a bunch of sizes, a bunch of jeans, a bunch of trousers, like dresses. So we just like amassed a stock of clothing for our background and also some of our principals. Reproduced as much as I could just on the timeline and with the manpower that I have. The job I'm on currently, able to reproduce a little bit more, but it's still hard because I took over it like mid-shoot. Someone else started it. So, it just really depends on one, your manpower and your budget, if you can reproduce things. And also, again, like I said, like the timing, things like that. But ideally, yeah, it would be amazing to reproduce everything. But I just didn't have the time or the money or the option to on Judas. So yeah, and it also involved me meeting like vintage dealers and working with vintage dealers. So I have this awesome video of me in this giant warehouse sourcing clothing for this movie, and they wouldn't let me put it in the presentation. I'm so annoyed because I wanted to show you guys the sourcing process as well. So, meeting different dealers and collectors, people like that you buy from. It's the same process I'm on the period piece I'm on right now. like these so many vendors that we end up using in addition to building pieces. And sometimes, yes, we'll come across like, this one dealer I had, he had like pristine dead stock. Like he bought out a department store and he had like brand new kid sneakers in the box and, Oxfords in the box, denim, and I bought a bunch of stuff from him and it was amazing because it was all pristine and brand new. That's like, you get lucky, if you find something like that. So it's hard to use vintage textiles. We end up having to like recreate them because if you can't find dead stock, then, a lot of times the textiles are like disintegrating, falling apart depending on how old they are. But yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm a fashion merchandising student. My question was, while you're making things like period pieces and like Confederate flag things, how do you try to infuse like your personal style, if there is any way that you can do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think through like my choices in color or like materials and textures, I'm able to put my personal stamp on things and twist on things. Even though this movie was period and like I leaned really heavily on the research, I still deviated a bit from it and played around with each character, so it was like, this thing of learning the rules so you can break them, So that's basically my approach when doing period. It's like learning the rules and then seeing how far you can like break them or push them and it still looks period or feels period, But I did want this movie to feel really authentic and I didn't want the clothes to be distracting because the story was so important. So I didn't want anything to feel off. Like it takes you out of the period where you're like, that's not, that's not 60s, So yeah, I think like that's definitely my use of color is one of my trademarks. I find a lot of my colleagues don't use color in the ways that I do and I'm very bold with my approach to color. So yeah.
Yes.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Erica. I'm also a fashion merch major. And my question is, when you graduated from Philadelphia University, what was like the biggest jump or risk you took to get where you are today?
Oh my God, great.
I quit my job. I got recruited to work at Macy's. They came to Philly U and, they recruited me, did an internship with them. And then I got to New York. I worked there for a couple months and I quit. It just wasn't me. It was cool. I tried to do the whole corporate thing and, I tried, but I've always been an artist at heart. And I just was afraid, I think, to study design in college. Now I wish I had, but like, I just had so many, like my family, nobody in my family does anything remotely creative. Like they all work for the government, military, etc. So I'm like the only one doing design as a career. And you get this impression that as a designer, you're going to be broke and you can't make money, you'll be a starving artist. And it's like the furthest thing from the truth. I know for a fact I make more money than a lot of my family members. I don't have a life, but it's like I'm not starving. So yeah, that was the biggest thing I did. I took a leap, I quit my job and I just started freelancing and I've been freelancing since like 2007 or 2008.
So cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
You can come up to right now.
I'm Madeline. I'm also a fashion merchandising major. And you mentioned that I think you're based out of LA, and I was just wondering, at what point do you stay in LA when you're working versus when you go to the sets where the movies are being shot to continue with fittings and everything?
Oh, okay. So I'm all over the place because movies are being shot all over the place. At the time when I started prepping Judas, I was living in LA and it just worked out great because I was able to work out of the studio there. I was able to work off of the Warner Brothers lot. and there's all the costume houses and the resources. Sometimes you'll be on a project in another state, and if you have enough money and can make a request of the producer, you can go to LA or New York and work, because you're like, hey, it's nothing here. We just got to go to these states, these cities that have it, and shop and do fittings and work. So it's really a case by case basis. I went back and I started in LA prepping Judas. We pulled a bunch of stuff, did a couple fittings. Then I had to go to Ohio, oversee the costume shop that was running there. Then I had to go back to LA and do more fittings. So I was back and forth for like the first couple of weeks. And then I came back and did all the rest of the fittings in Ohio.
Okay, thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I was just wondering, yeah, like the process of like how often you travel and yeah, so it's definitely.
It's a lot of travel. I'm actually, I started my career in New York, and I moved back to New York last year to be closer to the family. So, but I bounce around. I mean, I've shot in Atlanta, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Jamaica, LA, New York. Obviously, I'm in Boston now. It's my first time shooting something in Boston and working in Boston. There's nothing here, by the way, nothing. No fabric stores, no good shopping, nothing. So yeah, we have someone in LA pulling things and shipping it to us. We have someone in New York shopping things and shopping fabrics and finishes and overnighting it to us like every day. So
Okay.
Awesome, thank you.
Mhm.
you're welcome.
Oh my gosh, I'm like freaking out. Hi, my name's Emily. I'm in fashion merchandising. Literally my like biggest dream is to be a costume designer. So thank you so much for coming to talk to us.
I'm sorry on the first of it anyway.
I was just wondering, like, when you research for like, oh my god, I'm sorry, I'm like crying. When you are, oh my god, when you're researching for movies, do you ever like get concerned with, since like history has been like erased for like so much, like so many causes that happen in the world, like do you ever get nervous you're not getting enough research on what you need to be researching?
Yeah, no, that definitely happens. And in that case, you know, you use your imagination. You use your research as your base and you branch off from there. And you use your imagination. And then also what I've been doing is, you know, I have a colleague, one of the first people I ever worked for, she retired, and she gave me all her costume research, because she was like, I'm retiring, here you go. So, you know, I have all kinds of stuff from like the Renaissance era, colonial, like Regency, like all kinds of stuff, right? So I personally have been building my own library of research, because I just like to be able to be like, oh, I can walk over here to this other room in my house or apartment and here's all this stuff, right? But also, again, like I said, libraries and librarians are your friend when you get into those tight spots where you're like, oh my God, it's, you know, because I think a lot of us forget, you know, a time before the internet, you know what I mean? Because everything's so like readily available and accessible. It's like, oh, you can just Google a thing. There's some things that you can't Google and you have to go to the library to find. And sometimes you have to go to a very specific library to find it, which is why knowing the costume libraries are amazing. The one in New York and the one at Western, which is not open to the public, but the Met in New York is. So, you know, that would definitely be a huge help if you get stuck, like being friends with librarians and being like, hey, because they'll be able to find all kinds of stuff that you wouldn't even know where to start, you know. So librarians are still a really amazing resource for you when you get stuck.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I thank you for actually pointing that out, about the level of research and, you know, taking the extra step, going to the library, you know, asking more questions, right? And I think it's even a process of discovery of what questions to really ask.
Absolutely.
You know? And that comes from just like conceptualizing, sitting down, brainstorming, and trying to get your, whatever is in your head into an actual tangible thing. But thank you for that part. Library, research.
Going beyond the surface.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely.
Hi, I'm Paige. I'm also a fashion merch major. I was just wondering, so since your mood boards were primarily in black and white, was it difficult to like get inspiration for colors when you were relying on mainly like old pictures with no color?
You know what? That's why the catalogs were so key. Because the catalogs had more imagery in color and more photographs in color. So I was able to come up with color palettes based off of the, Sears and JCPenney and Montgomery Ward catalogs and what their color directions were for spring 69, summer 69, and fall 69. That's what I based our color palettes off of. And so that was a huge help because, yeah, you're right. There isn't, there is and there isn't. Like, we were lucky because we were doing a movie set in 69, closer to the 70s, where color photographs were starting to be more prevalent and more accessible, more affordable, right? So we were able to find some images in color, and that was super helpful and informative. And, there was some specific photographers that were photographing people during that time, and their photographs were in color. And so that also helped to inform our color palettes in Chicago during that time, of Black people in inner cities during that time, et cetera. So even though like a lot of the images we have of the Panthers or Fred were in black and white, we had all these other photographers' imagery that we could look at for color direction for specific years and seasons and times, as well as the catalogs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Miriam, and I'm a part of the fashion design program here. And I was wondering, as a designer, how do you overcome burnout or artist block when you're working on projects, especially when you have very little time to prepare, like you said?
How do I overcome burnout? I don't know. I think I'm like in a perpetual state of burnout. I mean, yeah, honestly. And again, this is why I put the article about the strike in the chat. But yeah, this is why we need, different hours and things. And honestly, I rely heavily on my team members when I get stuck, or sometimes I just will go away and go home, go in nature, go for a walk, go shopping, to recalibrate and get new ideas, just change my environment, get out of the shop, because the shop can be so overwhelming because everyone's asking me 1,000 questions and need answers right now. And this morning, I didn't go into the shop and I already feel less burnt out. You know what I mean? So definitely as a creative, you need that downtime. You need a minute to get your thoughts together, process what's going on. Because a lot of times, if I have too much input, it's hard for me to make clear decisions and come up with ideas. If there's a lot of people around me, needing this, needing that, asking this, asking that. And it's definitely my job to answer all those questions, give people direction. But sometimes I need a minute, to myself. And so just making sure you take that time to yourself to refresh and recharge throughout the day. It doesn't have to be you go away for a week. It's okay, I just need to take 15 minutes and go over here, take a walk, or take an hour to do this, or whatever you can fit into your day. And still, I'm still available. People can call me or text me, but sometimes I just need to separate myself from the madness for a while to kind of reset and recalibrate my thoughts.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, creatives aren't robots. I just want everybody to, once you get into the workplace, remind yourself, remind the people that you're working for, you're not a robot. You know what I mean? You're a human being. You need to eat, you need to sleep, you need downtime, you need days off, but the way our industries, various industries treat creatives and designers is we can just constantly output. And, it's up to us to like really stand up for ourselves and set boundaries and take the time we need to reset.
Hi, my name is Hannah. I'm a fashion merchandising major, and I was just wondering, do you find, this is kind of going back to what you were saying about the trench coat, do you find that when designing for a period piece, that historical integrity of the clothing, like color, silhouette, are sacrificed often for cinematography purposes?
I think it depends on a few things. It depends on the story, because like, for the sake of the story, you might have to use different colors that maybe aren't period correct. Again, for the sake of the story, I had to use a silhouette or create a silhouette that wasn't necessarily period correct. It just really depends on what story you're telling, and also like who the other creatives that you're collaborating with. Like if the director is like, we're gonna push it, like, and he wants to push it or she wants to push it, and it doesn't have to be so period correct and accurate, because it's like you're not making a documentary. When you're making a period film, it's not necessarily a documentary, but you do want it to have the feeling of the period and to be not taken out of the story because something is just like completely off, right? So, it's a balance, I think. On the project I'm on right now, it's a little bit of a struggle because, the producers don't like what the 80s looks like on a particular actress. And I'm like, okay, but all the silhouettes you're sending me and the styles you're sending me are 90s. And if I throw this into the 80s, then it's going to look completely off. So there's a little bit of like tug of war there, and just trying to like find the medium where it's like, the actress looks amazing and it looks great on her, but also it's staying true to her character and also true to the period, and figuring out how much you can like bend the rules of that period without it looking too off,
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is James. I'm a fashion design major, and I was wondering what advice you would give for structuring a costume design portfolio.
Okay. I mean, as a costume designer, you need to collaborate with directors of either stage or film. So, doing some plays, doing some short films is a good way to start your portfolio. You could also pick like your favorite film or play and like make some costumes and recreate some costumes, and shoot them however you want to shoot them, whether you want to shoot it on as a still or on film. And that's another way to like start your portfolio. As far as how you would structure it, I mean, I think the best way to do it is to start with like your color palette, then your fabric swatches, your sketches, and then the final garment, just how you would do any like design presentation, final garments. And then also if you have a moving picture image of it, or a short film, or, a video clip or a reel, like putting together a reel. But that's how I would structure a portfolio. It's funny because like I have everything online and I don't even do it this way, because the way I got into the industry is just by working and doing a film, doing short films. I didn't necessarily start by creating garments and shooting them, but that is a cool way to start too, So it's up to you, like based on your resources or your network, how you want to start your portfolio off, and go from there. And everybody's online, so I recommend however you decide to put it together, put it online, so people can access it and see your work and see you. And then you can also put together a Dex, for when you have meetings with people that is maybe more expansive than what you put online. Maybe your deck has all your swatches and your development photos, or maybe you put that on your website. It's up to you how you want to present yourself and what you want people to see.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Elena. I'm a fashion merchandising major, and I just wanted to ask, what part of this project really resonated with you, made you emotional, and how did those emotions kind of reflect in your work, especially replicating such a powerful, like, the Black character movement, essentially?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, as a Black person, Black woman, child of, people who were like, my mother was bused, as part of desegregation. And so I've heard her stories of like how that went for her. And, and she was a child in 69. She was like 6 years old getting bused, I believe, around that time. So, I grew up with a familiarity about various movements. And so I definitely felt a sense of responsibility to tell the story in a really dignified way through clothing. Like I wanted to show that even though the people in Southside Chicago, Black people in Southside Chicago were poor, they still dressed, they still got dressed every day and they still put themselves together. So I didn't want any of our characters to look just like down and out and raggedy. Like they still put effort into their clothes, even if they wore the same thing every day, So I just thought that was very, very, very important to show and to note. Also, when it came to the Panthers, particularly, I thought it was important to show the differences through clothing between the Chicago party and the Oakland headquarters, because through my research, the Oakland headquarters wore more leather jackets than the Chicago party. They were wearing a lot of the camo jackets, and the reasons being they were protesting the Vietnam War. It was what was like readily available. They were World War II jackets, so I just felt like it was really important to like make those key, clear distinctions, because I did not want it to feel like cosplay. I didn't want it to feel like, we're dressing up as Panthers and making a Panther movie and it feel like cosplay and stereotypical, because we've seen that kind of happen over the last couple of years culturally and pop culture and stuff like that. So I wanted it to feel real and I wanted it to feel grounded. And I wanted people to watch that movie without like the stigma about the Panthers that they have when they see the leather jacket and the beret. It's like, no, I want you to watch this movie and really listen to what he's saying and his ideology. So I'm not going to have him in a leather jacket the entire film. He's going to wear a coat and he's going to look like every man, right? So, which is what he did. Like he was every man. That was his vibe. So, there was a level of cool that the Oakland Panthers had that the Chicago Panthers did not embrace in the same way. The Chicago Panthers felt more like utilitarian to me, in the way they dressed and presented themselves. And I just wanted to make that like really, really clear distinction. I definitely felt a lot of emotions. We actually shot the raid on the actual day the raid happened, which was kind of crazy. It was December 4th and they recreated the apartment on a stage in Cleveland, and it looked like the apartment. I mean, the art department studied the documentary footage of the assassination of Fred Hampton. You can see they go through the apartment where he's murdered in that documentary. So the art department recreated it frame by frame based off of that documentary. They even analyzed like how many bullets were shot through this wall, and that it was like very thorough. And I also had to recreate his boxers that he was murdered in. And so that was a lot to have to look at photos of him laying on the ground after he was murdered. So it's very heavy. It was honestly very, very heavy. And after the movie finished, I had a hard time kind of like releasing that energy, honestly. And it took me a while to kind of like reset and get back to normal, because it was very, very heavy energy. It was also, when we shot, it was also the 50th anniversary of his passing when we shot the movie. So it was just a lot of like energy, and it was really sad. I mean, the day that we shot the raid and Lakeith, making the Kool-Aid for him as ONeal, Lakeith was crying the entire day because he was like really internalizing what he was about to do.
Yeah.
So he was crying the entire day. He was like, I'm killing Fred Hampton today. So, like people were really going through it emotionally during that week where we were shooting the raid sequence. It was hard on everyone. It really was.
Thank you. I appreciate your answer so much.
Mhm.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Hello, my name is Mary Grace. I'm also a FMM major. I was just wondering, like back to the conversation about the trench coat and like how the director wanted it to move, like as he was walking. Do you like, I don't know, do you like find yourself having to deal with a lot of like particular personalities? Everybody wants this thing this way. You have to please everybody. Like, I'm sure the praise is amazing, but like the criticisms that people give you that you work with, like. How is it, or do you guys like work together amazingly and there's no problems? Like, do you find yourself having to please multiple people at the same time who want different things?
Sorry, repeat the second part you just said.
Do you like find yourself having trouble trying to please the different people that you work with who all want different things? Like the director wants the coat to move this way, but the actor doesn't want it to look weird on that, like, do you find yourself having to do more than one thing at once?
Yeah. Absolutely. And also add producers in there. So it's like directors, actors, and producers with opinions. It's really hard. I'm not gonna lie. And it's a case by case thing. Like sometimes you'll be on a project and the directors and the producers are great and they love everything you do and they trust you and you're fine. And then you might have a difficult actor, right? Sometimes you're on a project and everything's great. Like everything's great. Everything and everyone's great, right? I had a project like that this summer where it was like everything was great. Didn't have any like push-pull dynamics when it came to costumes. Right now, the project I'm on, the director and most of the producers like it. There's one producer at the studio, executive at the studio, that doesn't like this one character's costumes. Because again, we're talking about 80s versus 90s. Like they want this person in more 90s silhouettes. And I'm like, we'll get there. We haven't shot the 90s yet, But every time this actress comes on the screen, they want her to look 90s. The actress loves her costumes and is like, this feels right. This feels right. I'm young. This is that. So in that case, you find ways to appease people while also holding on to your artistic integrity, but it's not easy. And it really is a case by case thing. There's some jobs where I've been better at it than others. And then there's other jobs where like the producer or director is just so overbearing that it's just like, whatever, forget it. It's like, whatever you want, I'm just trying to get through this. That happens, It's unfortunate when it happens. It's unfortunate when people don't respect you as a creative and let you do your thing as a creative and trust you as a creative, but it happens sometimes. I mean, and I'm always like, why hire someone to do the job if you're going to micromanage them and, basically like control and change their point of view as a designer, right? It can be really, really, really challenging. And there's no one answer to your question. It's like really a case by case basis. And you really just have to like, sometimes you just have to do your best and just get through it. And other times you just have to do a little bit more work and like push through it and show them that you know what you're doing and they'll calm down. It just really, really, really depends on who you're working with at the time. And if the other parties that be like the producers have your back, because like if you don't have somebody that has your back to protect you when these kinds of conversations and things are happening, then you're really just like floundering, so it's important to have really good relationships with your producers who can have your back in instances where either the director's being really difficult or an actor's being really difficult. So, that's also really, really important as well.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Victoria and I'm a fashion design major. I wanted to know how long it took you to do the whole design process from the research and then when the garment was made.
So on Judas, I started researching like a year before because I knew that it was coming a year before. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes, I'll get a couple of weeks to research, sometimes a week, sometimes a day, you know? So it really, really, really depends on how long I get from start to finish. On the project I'm on right now, it's literally been like, I have an idea today. I haven't even been able to like do sketches. It's like, hey, here's a picture. Here's some fabric. Let's make this. And it's like 2 to 3 day turnaround. You know, so it really depends on what project you're on, the timeline, but you know, I would say the fastest is probably like, you know, a 4 to 5 day turnaround from like idea to fabric shopping to completion of the garment. And that's insane still. It's like insanely fast. It's not ideal. But yeah, like a normal turnaround time would be like a month, you know, a couple weeks where you're, you know, you do research, you do your sketches, you do your fabric swatching, you either farm out the fabric and the sketches to a vendor who can make the pieces, or you do it in-house with your tailor. Like that's a normal, like doable schedule, is a couple of weeks. Oh yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm constantly trying to get myself together over here, Charlie. I don't know, you might have to.
What's going on?
You wanna wrap it up?
Thank you. You can mute your mill. Thank you for being with us today. That's not gonna work.
She's coming right over.
So thank you again. I have been waiting for this for probably a whole year now. So I'm very thankful that you were able to join us, not just because you're an alumni, of course, but because you're a Black woman doing your thing in industry. And we really appreciate everything that you have done for us and our students, just being here today and sharing your story and talking about the process. And we wish you nothing but the best, and we're definitely going to have you come again and speak to our students. So thank you, and good luck on your movie.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was really awesome, again, to come back as an alumni and speak about my career, my journey. And yeah, if there's something you guys want me to talk about another time, I'm totally down. I love having conversations about design and process and research. I love nerding out on that stuff, so I'm here.
Yeah, we'll plan it, we'll get on that.
Yes. See you soon.
Thank you.
All right, y'all have a good day. Take care.
So.